Hey, so we need to talk. I have been seeing a lot of things going around about the YouTuber and Twitch streamer Cryaotic, who is more commonly referred to as just Cry, and some apparent allegations against him. That was a name I had not heard in years and decided to take a look into it. The things I saw, mostly on Twitter, which I get is not the greatest place to be on the best of days, nevertheless has caused me to come out of the shadows a lot quicker than expected and make my first video ever. Leave it to 2020 to have me work for weeks on my first video that will probably get me immediately cancelled. Great. And I spent part of my birthday on it too. Anyway, before diving into this video, I want to make a few things clear. I'm not making this to say Cry is innocent of any wrongdoing or his actions were okay or anything like that. Cry messed up. Plain and simple. He has clearly caused people pain and should have to pay what's due. I also do not know Cry or anyone associated with him personally. My extent of involvement is that I used to be an avid fan. I would watch every video and make sure I caught every stream I could from 2012 to around 2015. There was a weird shift that happened around then, and I couldn't shake the feeling something was wrong. And I just felt weird watching at that point because I just couldn't get over that feeling. I did think about the guys every now and then over the years, and hoped they were doing good, but I guess not. So basically, I know of him, and he has no idea I'm a person who exists. Just so we're clear, no one asked me to make this, and I only know about as much as any average fan knows about the situation, which really is basically nothing. But I also have a unique position because I happen to have a very close family member whose career was basically as a therapist and rehabilitator for sex offenders in the Minnesotan prison system. They spent decades in the field, were highly respected, and even awarded multiple times for their achievements and implementation of new and effective ways of approaching treatment, and has recently retired. I consulted them about this case and made sure to run through all this with them to make sure that my facts are in order. Being practically raised around this sort of topic, it quickly struck me how misinformed the general public is about the subject and how to appropriately approach the situation. It's irked me for a long time, but this situation with Cry hit me differently. It's the first time someone I actually had some sort of knowledge about was accused, and the first time I felt I might have an understanding of some of the dynamics behind it. I have to admit, I wasn't as shocked as others seemed to be when this all came out, but that's because I knew some warning signs to look for. But I'm not going to go into my personal theories in this video. It's not okay to discuss someone else's mental health, especially if you don't know them and the specifics of their situation. Now, this video is going to be mostly based on facts as I've seen them, and I'm giving all parties involved the benefit of the doubt. I find it fascinating how quick people are to make judgments on small pieces of information people post about other people and don't appear open to hearing the other side of the story. I'm not saying that's a bad thing per se. I just think if one wants to be critical, then it would make more sense to be critical of everything we have. If we look at the evidence collected in the Reddit Megathread that I'll also link down below, It mostly comprises of personal, one-sided accounts of situations and out-of-context blurbs from conversations. I don't intend to be mean here, but this evidence is technically flimsy at best. All I see from the wider community is assertions that this is airtight, and I'm sorry guys, but I just don't see it. I'm not here to prove a case or anything, I just want to try to help educate. If you want to see an example of how flimsy evidence can actually be hiding a much deeper scheme, I'd suggest looking into the Spoctor theory drama from a couple years back. There are some interesting similarities between that and this current situation. There was also the Slazo drama that occurred that people were quick to judge without all the facts. Keep in mind, though, that these are entirely different cases, and the accused in these examples are a good decade younger than Cry. I bring it up merely to say that you can never really be sure what to believe, especially on the internet. But again, I'm going to be taking everyone at their word and keeping this video about education, not drama. But I digress. Let's move on. Now, I'm going to be addressing things that I'm frequently seeing come up on Twitter about this situation, and also some of the points brought up in Creepshow Arts, aka Shannon's, video. This isn't meant to be some sort of attack, or even really a response video. Everyone has a right to feel whatever feelings they feel about this whole situation, whether it's hurt or sadness or betrayal or whatever it may be. And you have the right to express those feelings, and even warn others if you feel it necessary. But I'm seeing people go past that point, and I think it could be helpful in this discussion to talk about it. Now, without further ado, on to the video proper. So, the first thing I want to discuss is the fact that word choice matters. I've been seeing people throw around terms that either they don't properly understand or for the purpose of riling up others. The biggest offending word in this is the word pedophile. I cannot count the amount of times in the past month I've seen people use pedophile incorrectly. In fact, even before this case specifically, it seemed people were using it more and more loosely, which is a problem. Pedophilia is a mental health diagnosis, not a criminal charge, and it's used to describe someone who has a sexual attraction to prepubescent children. That means kids who haven't developed secondary sex characteristics yet. There are many factors that can contribute to someone being a pedophile and for them to cross into becoming a child molester, but ultimately, it's all irrelevant when it comes to the Cry situation because there were no prepubescent children involved at any point. The term that would be closer to possibly accurate would be hebephile or hebephile. I'm going to be using hebephile, spelled Hebephile, because it is the word my source is more familiar with. But looking it up, they both seem to be correct terms. A hebephile is someone who is sexually attracted to pubescent minors, which are minors who do exhibit secondary sex characteristics. In other words, sexually developed teenagers. Hebephilia is not a mental health issue, basically because what normally should trigger a healthy sexual response is those secondary sex characteristics. But it does not make it morally or ethically right. I'll get more into that later. Again, this possibly could relate to Cry's situation, but there is evidence of Cry having relationships with legal adults, So it's not up to me to label him a heapfile. To recap, pedophilia is prepubescent minor attraction, hebephilia is pubescent minor attraction, and acting on pedophilic or hebephilic desires is wrong and causes potentially lifelong damage to the victim. If you want to learn more about pedophilia and how to better approach the subject, I would suggest looking into the work of Dr. James Cantor. I'll leave some links below to some short interviews he did, as well as his website. He is a clinical psychologist who is well known for his research into different sorts of atypical sexualities, and is a leading expert on pedophilia. My source also met him at a conference that he was speaking at, and they say he's a pretty great guy, so there's that. As an aside, I just want to say we as a society really need to change how we talk about pedophiles and pedophilia. Pedophile does not equal child molester and vice versa. Pedophilia is a treatable condition, but if we keep demonizing those suffering, it makes it harder for them to reach out and get the help they need. And the more someone feels scared, hopeless, or like they're screwed no matter what they do, the more dangerous that person becomes to both themselves and others. We as a society need to normalize support and getting help, not demonizing and shunning. But this is also not to say that the rising pro-MAP community is good either. That's a whole separate issue that could be the basis of its own video. But to summarize my thoughts on it, no, it is not okay to involve children in sexual activities, and if someone is feeling that way towards minors, they need to seek out professional help. Wanted to quickly note that, just in case people were getting the wrong idea here. So, why is it so common to see people using incorrect terms when it comes to situations like this? I had a friend say to me once when we were having a conversation similar to this that people react the same way to pedophile and heapfile, so why does it matter? Well, if it doesn't actually matter, why use the wrong one and risk a misunderstanding of the situation? One reason could just simply be not knowing, and if that's true, well, I hope this helped clear that up for you. When looking at those tweets and statements that misuse it, though, I'm pretty sure there's another intent at play. Most people's gut reaction to hearing that someone is a pedophile is to think that they must be a monster and that they are not safe to be around, so they should be removed from any sort of community or social circle they're a part of. As I've already explained, this is wrong, but nevertheless, I'm pretty sure that has been a lot of people's intent here. Using inflammatory language like pedophile, kids, children, and grooming, which I'm putting in this category for reasons I'll discuss later, evoke certain ideas to those who hear it, and in turn just causes more anger and confusion. I'll use this picture I made as a thumbnail and as speed paint footage for this video as an example of what I'm talking about. Yes, I know I'm not too good at the art thing yet, but that's beside the point. Certain elements in this drawing, to an outside observer, could be interpreted incorrectly, such as Crya's character appearing small, childlike, and helpless. In reality, he is an adult who does not need anyone to come to his rescue. Another was that I was not asked to help. I'm not even really full out defending him here. I'm just trying to fill in some facts, not only to try to help out Crya and those hurt in this situation, but also try to hopefully help stop future crimes from happening in the first place. The last little potentially misunderstood detail would be the angry mob. Not everyone is on the attack in this situation, and in all likelihood, like in most situations, It's really just a loud minority. But yeah, when you put all these details together, it's entirely possible for someone to get the totally wrong impression of this situation and what this video is about. That is what using incorrect words to describe situations also does. It's also important to know that attaching the wrong label to a person is a lie, and if they suffer consequences as a result, that may become grounds for slander or defamation of character. Now, I want to touch on why an adult might commit a sexual offense against a teenage minor. Or, basically, why would someone do what Cry is being accused of? I think a lot of the time, not having a proper understanding can lead to a lot of the fear, anger, and overall extreme reactions people have. So, hopefully shedding a little light on it might be helpful. Again, I'm not going to say which of these relate to Cry specifically, and also keep in mind that every case has its own unique story attached to it. This is just a broad overview given to me by my source, compiled through their years of working with offenders. The first reason is that the offender relates more with teens than they do with adults. This can be caused by emotional immaturity, which can come about on its own or be due to things like poor social skills or the lack of a healthy support system. If someone doesn't have a core group of people they can trust to turn to, it leaves them stranded when other issues in life occur, and that can keep a person from successfully moving through the different stages of life. Think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you don't know what that is, it's basically the things needed in order to be able to grow and develop a sense of self in a healthy way, organized into 5 level categories, and is often depicted as a pyramid shape. The levels in order are physiological, which is the need for things like air, food, water, sleep, and the like. Second is safety, which includes personal and financial safety, as well as access to resources. Third is love and belonging, which is having that social circle that you can rely on, be it friends or family. Fourth is esteem, which is self-esteem, confidence, a sense of achievement, and having respect for others, which in turn gets you respected by others. Only once all of these are met can a person truly focus on the 5th step, which is self-actualization. That's when someone can take on the ideas of morality, creativity, problem solving, and can take in facts when they are presented. So, in other words, it's the ability to be and act in a mature way. So, relating this all back, if someone has no trusted support system in their life, then they may become stuck at level 3, and that makes proper social and emotional maturing a lot harder. An adult relating more to teens than fellow adults might also happen due to arrested development. This happens usually when there was some sort of childhood trauma that a person's brain hasn't been able to properly cope with and get past. This, in turn, causes the person to almost freeze in time, unable to keep emotionally and/or socially maturing. So, while the person's still physically aged into an adult, they emotionally are still where that trauma occurred. There is also arrested sexual development, which is similar, but is caused by sexual abuse. Another reason for offending can be due to certain mental health issues or illnesses. There are certain conditions a person might have that can cause them to not properly be able to see or comprehend age or emotional development differences, like having a lower cognitive development. This could cause them to relate better with minors, so want to spend more time around them. Or it could just be that the idea of age making any difference in a person is not a concept they can grasp. Someone could also offend because they were thrill-seeking. Whether it be the power kick or just engaging in taboo behavior, some people end up crossing the legal boundary just for the sexual thrill. Heck, there's a whole porn category that sells itself as barely legal teens. There are many types of kinks that like to play with the line of what is taboo, like different sorts of role plays or types of BDSM, and there are always going to be people that feel like they need to take it a step further and, well, look, having a kink is fine. Breaking the law or hurting someone is not. I mean, unless it's consensual hurting, agreed on ahead of time. But anyway, moving on. The last reason I want to get into is that some people have distorted core beliefs when it comes to sex and relationships. A core belief is basically an idea that one holds as truth that sort of governs the way they perceive and behave in the world around them. I'd say a core belief of mine would be that all people are inherently good. Sure, some people do bad things, but I believe everyone does strive to be their idea of good. None of you have to agree with me on that, but it's something that shapes how I view different situations. We all have our own sets of core beliefs, but sometimes they can be distorted and lead to causing harm to others. One of these beliefs that can lead to a person offending is the idea that once a minor hits puberty and starts showing those secondary sex characteristics, they are ready to be sexual and start a family. While most of us see this as archaic, there are still places in the world that practice this idea. What this fails to take into account, however, is that even though the body is technically maturing, mentally and emotionally, there is still a long way to go. We no longer live in a world where people only live to be maybe 50 and you have to keep having kids because over half of them won't survive long enough to be able to have kids of their own. In the modern world, we can focus more on who we are as individuals, not just worrying about making sure humanity survives to the next generation. Young people, especially women, now have so many more opportunities to really thrive and be the best person they can be. And that starts with letting them develop fully, safely, and in their own time. Sex is not just something that affects the physical body. It has mental and emotional effects as well. So, while a teen is starting to learn about and have sexual feelings and desires, they are at a very different level than an adult. The next distorted belief is that once a minor hits the age of consent, any sexual contact from another adult is automatically okay. One reason this gets tricky is that there is no real definitive age of consent, and it varies depending on where you are. I actually learned while making this video that here in the States it's actually more common for 16 to be the legal age of consent. 34 states plus DC have 16 as their age of consent, 6 have 17, and only 10 have 18. If you don't know your state or country's law, you could end up assuming wrong. This belief, like the one before, doesn't factor in mental and emotional development. Everyone matures at different rates, so it's hard to put definitive lines on these sorts of things. One thing to really take into account is that the brain is still developing until around 25 to 26 years of age. So the question then is raised, should an 18-year-old be with, say, a 47-year-old? Sure, the 18-year-old is technically legal, but with the amount of differences in the stages of life, it gets pretty sticky. The last distorted belief is that virtual sex is not really sex. this is one of those ideas that is still being debated about in the mental health and legal fields. The virtual world in the grand scheme of things is still pretty new, so the extent of how much a purely virtual relationship can really affect a person in the long run isn't really known at this point. Plus, in the physical world, if someone is coercing you into a sexual encounter, there is the element of possible physical harm for refusing, even if not explicitly said. When it's only online, the physical ramifications are gone, and to stop any unwanted contact, there are things like block buttons and just turning it off and walking away. But on the flip side, I think anyone who lives on the internet can tell you, the relationships and bonds made online can be just as deep and meaningful as in real life. So when someone may no longer have that physical power online, emotional power can be used in similarly detrimental ways. But how in-person laws, short of harassment and luring minors into in-person meetings for criminal means, has yet to be fully translated. Whoa, still with me? Good, because now I'd like to talk about the things that concern me in Shannon's video. First, a small thing was that she didn't blur out the name of the commenter on Crya's video that she used. Sure, the comments are public, and people could find it if they wanted to regardless, but this essentially put a target on someone who merely wanted to show support for someone they feel some amount of personal connection to going through a hard time, and basically made them the poster child for the quote-unquote pro-Cry side, which they did not ask to be. I have an anxiety disorder, and I know if the me from just a few years ago had somehow worked up the courage to write a comment to then have it read out mockingly in a video, I'd probably have a panic attack and not return to YouTube ever. Granted, this person is not younger me, but we don't know a single thing about that person. So I just think it's in bad form to potentially open up a stranger to a hate mob they didn't expect or ask for. But hey, that's just my personal opinion. A thing I found prevalent in Shannon's video was this idea that mental health was just an excuse and that it was somehow irrelevant to the potential offense. While yes, mental health is not an excuse, like we've discussed, it can be a huge contributing factor. I don't know why so many people tend to confuse someone trying to explain something with someone making excuses. If it were just an excuse, Cry would more than likely not feel sorry for his actions, nor would he be making an effort to change. To that you might say, well, he acted like nothing happened and was gonna go ahead and stream right after releasing the video. And while yes, one could look at it as him thinking the video was enough, now back to normal, there are other factors at play that could lead to different conclusions. Something Shannon possibly didn't know when making her video, because she did openly state she was not familiar with Crya at all before making it, is that that stream was not just an income source for Cry, but also 3 other individuals. Cry could have been trying to go on with the stream for their sakes. Do I know for sure what his thought process was? No, I'm not him. I bring this up because the way things are framed in Shannon's video gives this illusion that how she sees what's played out is the only way to interpret things, and to entertain other possibilities is somehow foolish. Which brings me to her assertion that people should have the same reaction to this situation as they do to the Onision situation. Cry and Onision are 2 different people with completely different histories and behavior patterns. In general, you really shouldn't approach or treat any two cases the exact same way. That's like saying we should treat two cases of theft the same, even if one is petty theft and one is grand larceny. Or that we should treat two cases of depression the same way, even if one is bipolar depression while the other is situational depression. The only real similarity between Cry and Onision I see is that there were potential minors involved at some point. There are so many differences, but I'm not going to go into many of them because that brings in speculation about mental health and motivations behind things, and again, I don't personally know either of them. What I want to say is that this is the first time anything of this nature has come out publicly against Cry, and he has said he does not believe what he did was right, and that he does want to put in effort to change. Obviously, we don't know for sure if he means it or not, because it's too early to tell. Onision, on the other hand, has been publicly outed numerous times over the years, and has had multiple chances to change his behavior. Yet, I'm pretty sure to this day he has never even accepted any blame for his actions. In fact, he has quite the nasty habit of vilifying and publicly shaming both his victims and those who try to hold him accountable for his actions. Now, while examining these two, I'd like to bring up the fact that there are two overarching types of sexual offenders. Now, I think these two show off these sorts of differences quite well. I'm not going to say which is which, but if you know anything about the two, I think you'll see what I mean. The first type of offender is the predatory sexual offender. This is the type most people think of when they think of a sexual offender. A predatory offender's primary objective is to fulfill their own sexual gratification. To them, their sexual partner's wants or needs are of little concern or even irrelevant. They actively seek out their victims based on what they sexually desire, regardless of the victim's age, whether or not they consent, or their current condition, like, say, if they're too drunk or have some sort of mental health condition. For a predatory sexual offender, a lot of the time there is that added desire for power and control over the victim and or the situation in general. The second and way more common type of offender is the opportunistic sexual offender. This type of offender takes advantage of the opportunity to be sexual based on the situation in the moment. Unlike the predatory offender, the opportunistic offender doesn't actively go out in search of victims, nor do they tend to come up with big elaborate plans to lure in potential victims. The opportunistic offender usually finds themselves in a situation, and rather than recognizing that they should stop the escalating situation, they decide to go with it, even if it crosses legal boundaries. This is more likely to be the type to offend against family members and people the offender already has close connections to. My source also wanted me to point out, because they saw this a lot, that opportunistic offenses also happen very frequently when drugs were involved. Like, for example, say a minor was addicted to a drug, and they go to their dealer, but they don't have enough money to buy. The dealer may then agree to giving them the drugs in exchange for sexual favors. That would be an opportunistic offense. Now I want to address the grooming question. I see a lot of people being very sure that grooming in fact occurred in all this, and in Shannon's video, it seemed to be almost the base that the rest of her opinions relied on. But when going through the evidence with my source, there is actually a lot of doubt that it really applies at all. Grooming implies intent. While both predatory and opportunistic offenders can utilize grooming techniques, what their intent is varies. One case is someone who pursues making contact with the person they want to be sexual with, and slowly gaining their trust and breaking down their resistances for the sole purpose of basically creating the opportunity to be sexual. The other example is an adult has contact with a minor for totally non-sexual reasons, and at some point a sexual interest starts and the adult passively begins to pursue developing a sexual relationship. If we look at the evidence, there seems to be a pattern here of the accusers being the one to seek out Cry. He would seemingly treat them simply as friends until they became of age, and then, if they still showed interest in him, it would become something potentially more than friendship. Cry himself said he's a flirt, which I take to mean that he flirts with friends that he doesn't actually intend to have sexual contact with. Can this be confusing if the other party has deeper feelings? Yes, particularly online and especially over text. Would it be inappropriate for him to say flirty things to his fans that could be underage because he sees that as friendly? Yeah, probably. I could keep going down this path, but I'm already going a bit into theory crafting, and that is not the point. The point is, grooming implies intent, and it's hard to see any sort of grooming intent from the current public evidence. So, as a general wrap-up on my feelings towards Shannon's video, it appeared to come off as judgmental and harsh, especially towards Cry's viewers. If what she said is true, and there are a lot of younger viewers, it seems especially harsh to come in and bully them just for expressing their opinion. It also appears she thinks that everyone who watched Cry's quote-unquote apology video then also went out of their way to look up all the evidence against him before liking and leaving their comment. Either that, or she thinks Cry said a whole heck of a lot more in a 4.5-minute video than could physically fit in that amount of time. She says he full out admits to things that, even in the description of the video, and in the few tweets after, he did not say. Also, when she brings up some of the evidence, she says there are things said that were not. It may be just a word or two, and it may seem nitpicky because she may have seen it as implied in said statement, but she stated what she was saying were facts. But for it to be a fact, the words she uses need to be there, not implied to be, because a word or two changed, missing, or added can change the meaning of what was originally stated. It's also clear she's not a mental health expert, which is fine, I'm not either, but she says certain things Cry said are contradictory when they really aren't. He can simultaneously be getting better overall and still have episodes where he's not okay. I am currently on a prescription to help with anxiety, but I was also given another one recently for if I have panic attacks or can't get my anxiety back down on my own. Overall, I'm in the healthiest place mentally I've ever been, but that doesn't mean flare-ups don't occur. Granted, that's a personal account that you'll have to take my word on, and Cry and I don't suffer from the same issues, but getting better or feeling better doesn't mean cured. It is also possible, while having a manic episode, to think you're okay, only to fully realize you weren't once out of it, especially when you're first getting familiar with the signs of it. Mania is also really good at making you think that you are in the best place ever at the moment, and you have never seen everything so clearly before. So, as a final thought on the video, when talking about things this serious in nature that could involve both someone's mental well-being and possible legal actions, one should really make sure to do more research and not assert things as facts that are either alleged or just speculation. A video that claims to know more than it does, especially in an aggressive way, just riles up more people who know even less about the situation and just adds more confusion to an already confusing mess. For those I've seen begging their favorite news or drama channels to cover this and don't understand why they haven't, this is probably why. Adding more bystanders into the mix when anger and confusion levels are already high causes the new people to feel a knee-jerk reaction to take a side, which in turn causes even more anger and confusion, especially online where thousands and thousands of people can all be adding their own thoughts and opinions depending on what they have or haven't seen or heard about it, and end up distorting the entire situation. At the end of the day, everyone directly involved is hurting and needs help, and it's okay to empathize both with the victim and the perpetrator. This isn't some schoolyard disagreement that if one side is right, then the other must be wrong. It's far more complicated than that. Life is far more complicated than that. It's said that the truth often lies somewhere between both sides, and if you decide to only believe what one side is saying while demonizing the other, then it's quite possible we'll never get to the truth. And really, honestly, this all should have been handled privately, and if necessary, in court. Dragging this out onto the internet when it's still in the he said, she said stage of fighting about what's true and what's a lie doesn't help anyone and just makes the situation worse. But what's done is done. So, where do we go from here? There are a few main points that I want to make clear. Vilifying and shunning an offender is the exact opposite of helpful in these situations. Take extremist religious groups, for example. A lot of the time, they use the threat of shunning or excommunicating someone who starts questioning the teachings of the church. Just the idea of losing everyone they love and care about can keep people in some potentially very dangerous situations. And even if they find the courage to finally leave, it can take several years of therapy to try to heal the scars from suddenly losing everything. Just listen to anyone who's gone through it and you'll see how much damage can be caused. A similar thing can be said about offenders. There is already so much shame built up inside when somebody either realizes they're having pedophilic or hephilic thoughts, or are having inappropriate fantasies they can't control, or even if they realize they've done something that maybe is not necessarily illegal, but is still further than they should have gone, and they may even have some regrets, but are afraid to talk about it. If someone is suffering from these sorts of feelings or desires, or are scared of what boundary they may not catch themselves crossing before it's too late, and they know that if the people around them were to find out that their life, all they've worked for, all they care about, were to be gone in an instant, most people would try to deal with it on their own. But without the proper tools, a person who is already feeling such a huge burden by keeping it all secret and hidden might try to find a little wiggle room and push the boundary just a little bit to relieve some of those pent-up feelings. That wiggle room only helps for so long before the added shame, guilt, and regret become too much again and they need just a little more room. After a while, what was just thoughts may become reality, and then a few things may occur if they're not caught. They may be horrified at what they've done, swear they'll never do it again, but to try and save face, they may keep it all in, and the cycle repeats. Some might find a sense of thrill from not getting caught, and like other adrenaline junkies, might try to get that high again. They can also just give up any hope that they can turn their life around and stay locked in a dark hole, not caring about the potential harm to others anymore because they've internally accepted that they are the monster that people thought they'd be. Of course, there is always the chance they'd turn themselves in and take the risk of losing everything, or at any point those dark feelings become too much and they end up taking their life. There is also the scenario that has been opened up more due to the internet age. If someone is having unhealthy thoughts and desires, but then finds others with the same unhealthy feelings, they can end up normalizing it for each other. Then that can spiral into something darker and more inappropriate because they found others to support the deviant behavior. And that's how you get these big underground groups on the internet who make and distribute highly disturbing content. Individually, the members of these groups may have never even entertained the thought of such perverse criminal actions. But because of that initial fear of being caught for having unhealthy desires and thoughts, and finding others who not only accepted them, but made them feel it was okay, slowly they can be brought further and further down the ladder into the darkest pits of criminal offenses. If you want an example of that sort of thing happening, there is the whole Kuro the Wolf and the Zoo Sadism Telegram group leaks. If Crya's case already triggers you though, I would highly suggest not going down that road. There was quite a lot of highly disturbing material in that case. It does show, however, when unhealthy people find each other, they can sink each other to new and disturbing places. Anyway, all of this is basically to say, by making people fearful of being caught, all you really are doing is opening up the possibility of new victims being created. By normalizing the conversation and educating each other on potential warning signs one might have internally, we can get people the help they need even before a single victim is created. I'm not saying in this specific case that we should all forgive Cry and support him or whatever. If this is all too much for you, or you simply are just done with him and the situation, it is a perfectly valid option to step away and no longer support him. What is not okay is to try to force others to make the same choice as you. For the viewers and us on the outside fringes of this situation, I just want to say the feelings you have about this are valid. Whether you feel hurt, betrayed, angry, sad, whatever it is, it's okay to feel and express that. We live in an interesting time where we feel a lot closer to people than we really are, and so it's understandable to have very deep feelings. But please do remember, your feelings are only your own. Don't try to force others to feel the way you do by using inflammatory language and judgmental attitudes towards those who feel differently. At the end of the day, we really don't know much for sure about what happened. There's a lot of he said, she said, personal one-sided accounts, and out-of-context blurbs of conversations. I know that Snake has reportedly received claims from more accusers and possible victims, but we, the public, have no idea what is in said claims. All we know is that they were not all minors at the time of potential contact with Cry, which can mean all but one was a minor, or only one was a minor, or anything in between. And if it's anything like the claims that are public, some could be simply the conversation they had with Cry once made them feel uncomfortable. There is just no way for us to know, nor is it really our place to feel entitled to know. If legal boundaries were crossed and there is evidence to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, then it's for a legal court system to decide what to do, not the court of public opinion. And if there are people with evidence, again, if you want to press charges, then give it to the police. Don't post it. I say this because I am aware that people were claiming that they were sent dick pics when they were possibly underage, and please, for the love of all that is moral and decent, please do not post that publicly. Not only do we really not need to see that, but because that was privately shared, to turn around and post it publicly opens up a whole other can of worms. Also, I noticed a lot of the evidence on the Megathread seems to be disappearing. Whether it's due to legal reasons, people wanting out of the drama, or people realizing it really wasn't proving much of anything is really anyone's guess. I just found it of note to mention because there suddenly seems to be a lot of unavailable tweets. On another note, I see a lot of people bring up the lack of a follow-up video from Cry as some sort of point against him. There are many simple explanations for this. If there are indeed lawyers involved, he could be advised to not say anything publicly. If the police are actively investigating, they could have seized his computer, which would make making a video a little difficult. Or there is the possibility he's trying to do the right thing, collect his thoughts, and get the help he needs so he doesn't release something publicly that could cause more harm. Those are just a few reasons off the top of my head which would explain the lack of a video without having some sort of ulterior motive. But honestly, I really want you to think about something. If Cry were to release said video, say, tomorrow, would you really be ready to listen to what he has to say? Or do you just want something new to pick apart and add fuel to the flames? Really think about that, and you might just find another potential reason that he's been publicly silent for over a month. Now, to the victims, accusers, those personally hurt by Cry's actions, and those who were once close to him, who may come across this video. I mean you no malice or ill will with this video. I do genuinely feel horrible whenever anyone is hurt. I really hope that you are seeking professional help and support to help you through this difficult time. And I can't imagine the added stress of having these things in the public eye. It's also very important to, if you don't already, have a safety network of friends and family that you can trust wholeheartedly and look to them for support throughout this. The emotions you're feeling are valid, and work through them at your own pace. And also, if you feel you need to, or haven't already, take an internet break. It's a crazy place, even in the best of times, and we could all use the space every now and then. And to the guys of the late night crew, I've seen a lot of stuff being thrown your way about what you did or didn't say or do in all of this, and I just want to say, this isn't your fault. It can be very easy to slip into blaming yourself for not seeing something or saying something sooner. And it's easy to look back and say, oh, how could I not have seen this? Or, oh, I should have said something here. These sorts of things can be very hard to really see in the moment, especially if you don't know what to look for or suspect that something is going on. It's not your job to be your colleague's keeper, so to speak. So, if you're having a hard time not blaming yourself, just realize it's not your fault and talk to someone about it if you can't move past it. Also, I know in this video I talk a lot about not shunning people, but it is a perfectly reasonable choice to decide to walk away. An individual's health and mental well-being come first, and if a relationship is only causing pain and grief, then the best thing to do is wash your hands of it and walk away. Now to cry. I really do hope you are genuine about getting help and wanting to get better. I know you don't know me and didn't ask me to speak up, but I don't like seeing people hurting and hurting each other, and I just couldn't sit back and watch this unfold from the sidelines anymore. I really truly believe with the right help and support, you can not only just get better, but come out of this a much happier and healthier person. You don't have to let this chapter of your life define you. It'll be really easy right now to get swept up in the hate and anger coming your way and let yourself believe there's no hope and that there's no point in getting better because it's all lost anyway. But you have to trust that it will get better. Treat this as a chance to regroup yourself, sort out your thoughts and goals in life, lay all the cards out on the table, own up to what you're responsible for, express your remorse, make amends where needed, accept the consequences, and then let this be the past, without the burden of all the secrets anymore. And yes, you can't expect everyone to take you at your word, as a lot of trust was broken. In fact, a lot of people may not accept anything you say as true at this point. Let your future actions prove your truth, and over time, trust will be rebuilt. I have heard that you have tried to keep reaching out to victims and accusers after all this started coming out, and while I don't know if you still are or not, you should really stop. That also includes former friends who have decided they need to step away. It's understandable to feel overwhelmed when facing things you're ashamed of and realize you caused, but you have to accept that you can't just fix this. All you can do is get professional help to sort things out, and when the time is right, the therapist can help you develop a plan to apologize, take ownership of your actions, express how you feel sorry for the hurt those actions caused, and that you are committed to change. Then leave those affected be. They need their time to heal. If and or when they're ready, they'll come to you. And if they do, be ready to listen. You're right when you said that your future actions will say more than anything you could possibly put into words. And by you getting help and getting better, it will not only help the victims more than trying to convince them through your words right now, but it will also help those who may be in a similar place that you are right now see that there is hope and they too can get better. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe on multiple occasions you have said that you like to help people. So if you are hitting a roadblock and feeling like you want to give up, it might help to keep that in mind. Now, yes, a lot of this might sound like things you've already kind of said, just worded a little differently, but that's because I believe you are on the right track, and it can be helpful to hear it from someone else, especially with all the extra noise. Lastly, it does sound like you have some people sticking by you and helping you behind the scenes, and that's good. But if you do find you need some extra support or just someone to listen, I'll have a link down below to my Twitter and email if you need it. We could all use some extra support from time to time. That goes for everyone else too, by the way, especially if you stayed with me to the end of this video. I know this was a lot, and that this is a topic that a lot of people tend to shy away from properly discussing. So, you all deserve to treat yourself after this. Do something nice for yourself today. Like, eat a cookie and take a warm bath. I don't know. Whatever makes you feel good. But yes, if you feel like you need to reach out to someone, either about this topic or anything else really, just DM me on the Twitter I made for this channel or email me. I'd be happy to do what I can. Just keep in mind that I personally am not really an expert on anything, but I'm good at listening. This year has been a tough one, and feeling alone in all this can just make it so much worse. Also, down in the description below, I'll provide various educational resources and sites that can provide help to those affected by the things I touched upon. These are all sources that my family source said they have recommended to offenders they've worked with, as well as their families and those affected. I would personally recommend Stop It Now as a great source for anyone affected by child sexual abuse, or if you want to learn more about how to prevent it from happening in the first place. They provide help and resources for victims, families of victims, and even those who are worried if they themselves might become an abuser, or those who may be worried about someone in their life but don't know what to do to help. They also have a confidential helpline, so you can find the help you need. But all the links are good and trusted sources, so feel free to check those out or link them to someone you feel might need them. Also, as a warning, I am going to leave the comment section open, so feel free to comment. I would just humbly ask, please try and stay civil with each other. Say whatever you want about me, that's fine, but I am hoping this video will start a dialogue, not a war. My source also wants you all to keep in mind that as humans, we all make poor decisions, but we can learn from them and change. I really truly hope that this helps as a step towards normalizing getting help. While this particular video is geared more towards Cry's case, I hope some of these points can be helpful tools when approaching any situation similar, either currently unfolding or that may come up in the future. I know that there have been a lot of other names flying around as of late, but I unfortunately am not as familiar with them or their cases at this present moment. But yeah, I hope that I did well enough presenting some of these more basic principles and ideas that can help in a more general sense. As one final lesson I think we can all take away from this situation, you need to be able to set and vocalize boundaries in your relationships, especially when most of the conversations are online or over text. Something I learned as an actor is that something like 80% of communication is nonverbal. So that's things like body language and facial expressions. So when that element is stripped away, something that may have seemed clear in person is no longer clear. And then when you go even further to just text, then you can't even rely on inflection and tone to help clear up what you mean. So, if you're pursuing any kind of relationship online, whether it be a friendship or a romantic relationship, you have to be able to clearly communicate when the other party says or does something that makes you uncomfortable. If the other party then does not respect those boundaries, or if you feel too scared to place them in the first place, you may want to choose to not keep that relationship. If someone doesn't respect boundaries after repeated reminders of said boundaries, then they clearly don't respect you as another human being, and you should probably get out of there before things get worse. But if you're too scared or nervous about what the other person might think if you set your boundaries, then you are just setting yourself up to get hurt without the other person even realizing they've hurt you. That's not a situation anyone wants to find themselves in. Remember, the other person can't read your mind. Food for thought. Anyway, that's all I've got. While there's a ton more that can be said, I think I got my main points across here, and this video is already quite lengthy. Seriously though, thanks for listening. Check out those links. Remember we're all human, wear your masks in public, and see you around. Peace.